Welcome to The Purpose Effect, the space where we get honest, we get intentional, and we get aligned with the life God designed for us. I'm your host, Alesha, on Mondays, and of course, my friend David does it on Wednesdays. We do it together on Fridays. Our mission is simple: to help you stop floating through life and start living with purpose, clarity, and action. And today, you guys, I'm super excited to have an amazing guest on. I actually had the privilege of watching and hearing him and his sons at a convention just a few weeks ago. And I say watching because not only did he just share his passion, but I got to watch his sons perform. And let me tell you, I was blown away with what they were doing. And we'll get into that as we go in this conversation. But let's just say American Ninja Warrior, wow. Holy buckets, right? With that, we have Ty Bennett on. He is a serial entrepreneur. He just came out with another book, and I definitely want to make sure we talk about that. But you guys, I will tell you, you will hear very quickly his passion for helping inspire people to live with purpose and intention. And it just lines up so well with the purpose effect. So with that being said, Ty, thank you for being on today. I so appreciate
Yeah,
it.
Alicia, this is fun. I love what you're doing. I love the mission that you have, and very much in alignment, I think, with how I try and live my life and the things that we're trying to share. So I'm excited to dive into this with you.
Awesome. I think in just what you said, it's really powerful. You talked about trying to live that way. And I think that's one of the things is it's learning as we go, right? Like we don't have it all figured out right at the beginning.
No.
It's a process. And so the more we can take people on that journey to walk with intention, to walk with purpose, it changes our lives. So, Ty, can you just share a little bit of your story and maybe what got you to where you're at today? If you want to try to sum it up or take as much.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It was great that we had a chance to meet at a convention just recently. So I primarily today am a keynote speaker. I speak all over the world for different audiences. My fifth, like you mentioned, my fifth book, Redefining High Performance, actually comes out in May, on May 15th. So I'm excited about that. We did an event yesterday in Louisiana, and that was the first group that got copies of the book. And so I'm excited that like we're starting to get it out there in the wild. It exists. That's always a fun process. So my background is as an entrepreneur. I have always been very entrepreneurial, pretty ambitious, driven person, and I love people, and those were good fits for me. And so in my 20s, my brother and I built a successful business together. And in the process of that, we had great success, but for me, I found purpose in speaking and inspiring and training and developing people. And so that was something I just felt, I don't know how else to explain it, but we're on this podcast, so I can say I felt like that's what I was supposed to do with my life. And so I wrote my first book in 2010 and started speaking. That's been the primary thing that I've done since. I'm entrepreneurial, so I've owned a couple businesses along the way, invested in some different things. But I biggest thing, most important thing is I'm married. I have 5 kids, and they're awesome. You had a chance to meet 2 of them a couple of weeks ago, and they get to share the stage with me, which is probably the highlight of my career. It's been the coolest thing so far. So yeah, I'm excited to dive into this. Let's see where it goes.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. I love just hearing your passion as well and how you're using it. And I think it's powerful too to point out how you're taking your family along the journey with you, right? I think oftentimes we think our purpose is just us, but as God moves through us and uses us, he provides ways to bring our family with and to demonstrate it to them. So I love
Yeah, I
how
would have never imagined when I started speaking, let alone before that, that I would be doing what I'm doing now with my boys being part of it. But it's been the coolest thing and such a cool experience for them and for me to watch them have the experience and guide them through that. So, yeah, we can dive into that. But yeah, it's been really neat.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's share. Can you share a little bit more about your book and just the heart behind it? Because there's a lot of
Mhm.
things that I think even at the convention that you really hit on that ties in well with your book. And I
Yeah.
would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so we conducted a national research study on high performance. I've always been somebody who is both driven to be a high performer and often work with high performing sales groups, leadership groups, others. That's who I'm speaking to often. So we decided to partner with a research firm out of Texas and conduct a national research study on high performance. I wanted to really see, I had my assumptions of things that I think move the needle, right? Things that drive high performance or stop us. But I was curious to see what the data actually shared. And the reality is, some of it was correct. My assumptions were proven out in the numbers, and others were a little bit surprising. I'm like, huh, that's interesting. So, out of that research, we published that research last year, and then I now am expanding or have elaborated more on that. And I'm coming out with a book called Redefining High Performance. So it's research backed insights to help you to lead better, sell more, and perform higher. And this is a unique book of the five that I've written because I actually opened the book and closed the book with two different fables that kind of flush out some of the research, and then the bulk of the book, the middle 18 chapters, are like flushing out the drivers of high performance, the barriers to high performance, the key mindsets that came out of it, how do you sustain it, some of those things that we uncovered in the research. So yeah, that'll be the newest book that comes out here very soon.
So when you looked at high performers and you work a lot with high performers, can anybody be a high performer, or is it
I
just
think
is it
so.
more innate? Okay, so in your
So
research,
I do think that there's some people are more innately driven than others, and that's going to lend towards some of these things. But yeah, I think that the cool part is when you study high performers, there's commonalities that they share that you and I can observe and then adopt to raise our level of performance, right? And if you think about these core drivers, there were five that came out of the research, and they're not going to seem earth shattering. The hard part is doing them. The hard part is putting them in practice, right? The first one is preparation. I think high performers put in work to prepare for those moments that matter most. We could dive into any of these if you want to. The second was consistency. And consistency is tough, right? For any of us and we could take it in lots of different realms. But the thing I want to point out about consistency is not about perfection. It's about coming back. See, I think what happens for a lot of us is we say, okay, I'm going to do this every day. And by day four, when we miss it, we just throw the whole thing out the window. And yeah, you missed a day, but guess what? It doesn't, the growth happens in coming back. It's okay. We're not going to be perfect, but it's the people who decide to come back that really start to make a difference and have that growth in their life. So consistency was a big one. Motivation and internal, we have motivation, but I also, our research found that there's some specific factors that create the environment for people to be more motivated. If you're in a leadership role, you can't necessarily give people motivation. I can't force you to be motivated, right? But I can create a situation in which motivation can thrive, and therefore my people can be more engaged. Adaptability has actually stood out as the most crucial skill to be successful in today's world, which makes sense. We're in a world
yeah.
that's constantly changing. And the thing that came out of the research more than anything is adaptability is about learning. It's
Mm,
about being able to continue to learn and grow. Because if we want to thrive in a world that's constantly changing, then our rate of learning has to keep pace with the rate of change. And that skill set. So if you're listening to this, you already have this ingrained in you because you're seeking out good things. You're here to learn. You're wanting to add something to your life. So developing that skill keeps us relevant in a world that will be different than the world we're running into now. And then the fifth one is connection. Connection is the multiplier effect when it comes to high performance because we don't do this on our own. We all thrive when we're feel connected both to each other and to a sense of purpose, and having that in effect. When I lay those five out, none of those are innate. None of those things. You might have a little bit more in motivation. You might consistency might come a little bit easier for you or something, or dealing with change might be a little bit more natural for you. But these are all learned things that we have to put in place.
which I love that because I think it ties so well with purpose. Because I talk so much with my audience about living a life of purpose, living with intention. But what your book, it sounds, is doing is giving the tools. Like, here's how to do it. Here's the
Yeah.
things that you need to actually make these steps to begin that. Because I think in order to walk out your purpose, it's way bigger than us. And I tell that to people. Every person is designed for a purpose. Like, none of us
Yeah.
are here by chance. And God has it, but it's bigger than us. It's way beyond us, this purpose. And so diving into that, and I love thinking about how do we help people to excel at it. And when you're saying all these things, adaptability, consistency, motivation, Those are huge in any realm to be successful because you're
For
not
sure.
talking like when I think of high performer, I think of athletes. I naturally go
Okay.
to athletes, right? But and I think you demonstrate that with your sons being phenomenal athletes in the American Ninja. It's phenomenal to watch them. But you're talking any area, people can be a high performer, and here's how to do it.
Yeah, so our research was based on looking at working America. So 18 to 65, full-time employment, every ethnicity, every region of the country, every gender, like all those factors factored in. But looking at working America, I do think athletics is often a great metaphor for us to learn from and to see. And that's why I bring the boys on stage. It brings it to life and you can see some of the lessons and then it makes it just a cool experience and entertaining, right? But I also, one of the things that I wanted to point out that came out of the research that I think is important to this conversation is the assumption, and I think what we've run on for a very long time, is that the way you perform is you work harder. If I outwork you, then I'm going to outperform you. And that works to a point, but burnout is very rampant. And burnout is not because we're working hard, it's because we're working hard on the wrong things. So, what came out of the research is that we need to not work harder to perform higher, we need to work deeper. Those are
Yeah.
different things because working deeper is focusing on the things that matter most. Working deeper is creating systems that are sustainable. Working deeper is having a sense of purpose that brings you back to center. Working deeper is creating a balanced life so that you can continue to show up. It's not burning yourself out and killing yourself off. Working deeper, not harder, is really what sustains high performance.
And when I love that, and I think I love how you're describing it because it's exactly what I share with people too. Is like the more you know your purpose, you have to walk it out with intention. And as you walk out with intention, the things that are not part of your purpose begin to fall away. But
Mhm.
it's also like you're saying, it's going deeper. It's being way more diving into it. And as you do that, things you have to let some things go. And I think oftentimes we want to hold on to the things that maybe
It's hard.
don't as much. And so it's letting go of those things to walk it out.
Yeah, those are hard things to do. I also, as you were saying that before, I think that we also have to give ourselves grace that there's times and seasons in our lives because this conversation, some of the things that I would have with you today, if you were to go back several years ago, you would have called me a high performer, but we'd be having a different conversation because my vantage point would be different. Some of the things that I've experienced have been different. The way that I view the world, the research that I've done, some of those things. And so I do think that we're evolving beings, right? We're going to continue to change and morph and find deeper meaning or different passions or areas in which we feel like we are called to make a difference. And I think that there we can have grace in that too, that we can continue to evolve in that process.
Does that fall under the adaptability
I
of
think
having to
so.
have that
Yeah.
grace as well in it?
Yeah, because change, okay, think about that. So you just hit on a really good point, I think, is we think about change often as external. The hardest change is internal.
Yes.
The hardest thing for us to do is change ourselves. The deep work of like actually facing something, changing habits, like unlearning skills, that's hard. That is a hard process. Uh, and even just to have the awareness that A, we need to, and B, we want to, like that's pretty
Yeah.
hard in and of itself.
That's one thing I always hit on with people is, and I'm really trying to work with people of just stepping into that awareness first
Mm,
because I think so many people are not even aware of it. They're just, I tell people I'm a recovering floater. Like I was floating through life and
okay.
just living life. And I'm involved in stuff and I was doing things, but not with really any purpose or intention.
Yeah.
And now as I live a life with that purpose, with that intention, I'm no longer floating through life. But I had to first be aware of it. I had to first be aware of, oh my goodness, like I'm just floating here. I'm just, oh, I'm checking off the boxes, but there's no real purpose and drive. In order to become a high performer, do they have to have an end goal in order to be successful at that? What's the end result? Or is it more focusing on the journey to get there that makes a big difference?
That's a great question. I think for some people, they do have a very clear end goal, and others not as much. I think you have to have a direction that you're going, right? I think you have to have something that you're going after. But again, eh, I think that sometimes those end goals continue to shift, they continue to change. If you would have asked me at age 21 what my end goal was, I was crystal clear, but that's not even having arrived basically there, things shifted, right? I was like, I'm not going to be done, right? I'm going to continue to move towards other things. I think there's some, what you described for you, I think a lot of people deal with is we're living in a state of distraction or life is happening by default. And there's a lot of activity without a lot of accomplishment. And because of that, we need awareness to find a sense of purpose. But then as you move forward, you do find a sense of purpose. There's a sustainability aspect of how do you continue to show up and perform at a high level when once you're performing at a high level, things become routine. It's harder to decide to put in the prep work to show up the way that you need to. It becomes monotonous, right? And so there's another sense of purpose that becomes grounding and centering at that stage as well that's important.
Yeah. Looking at all the different stages and always growing and changing.
Yeah, like I'll give you an example. I have a friend who I feature in the book. Her name's Sandra Joseph. She played Christine Daae in Phantom of the Opera on Broadway for 10 plus years, longest running Christine that there's ever been. Imagine for 10 years, you're doing 7 shows a week, the same lines, the same songs, the same moves, the same dance, like all of it, right? At some point, that's got to be hard to show up
Yeah.
full energy every
Yeah.
time. So, like year 6, 7, somewhere in there, she was hitting that lull. And a friend invited her to coffee and he presented her with this box that he had made. And on the top, he wrote the word perspective.
Mm.
And when she opened up the box, he had scoured the internet and he had found all of these stories of people who had gone to see Phantom and the stories that they had of taking their daughter or taking their mom before she passed away or why this was so meaningful for them. And so in her dressing room, she had this box that every time before a show, she would open that up and read one of those and say, Tonight I'm performing for that person. And that's where a sense of purpose gave her sustainability. She was already performing at a high level, but to continue to is tough. And yeah, I think there's different areas in which we have to find purpose, and that awareness becomes vitally important. What you talked about, I think, is crucial. If it's awareness that, hey, I'm just floating through life, everything's happening by default, there's no design happening. Or maybe you're on the other end of, okay, I'm struggling to find the right energy because I've just been doing this for a long time. How do I recenter and find that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just powerful. Do you see, even with your sons that were at the convention, are you demonstrating that to like, how does it, okay, so follow with me on this. I'm thinking of my kids. So I have
Okay.
5 kids as well.
Awesome.
I have a 21-year-old and I'm actually a grandma. And oh my goodness, it's the most
Congratulations.
exciting ever. But then I have a couple set of twins are 15 down to a 10-year-old. How can I teach this to them? I know I'm living it, but do you have ways that you're teaching it to your kids of how to walk this out?
I'm trying, right? I think we're all in this process of trying with our kids. And they're all different and different stages, right? The conversations I have with my 20-year-old are different than I have with my 5-year-old and everywhere in between. But two things. One, I'm big as a parent on having lots of communication, lots of conversation, and what most people would view as adult conversation, not meaning like we're bringing them into all the things that they don't need to be part of, but like we assume that they can have real conversations and try and talk about these types of things. But then more importantly, it's getting into from my experience, it's getting into their world and helping them understand how it plays out in those spaces. So you mentioned my boys, they compete in American Ninja Warrior and they bring that on stage and it's super fun. But the amount of conversations I've had in that space where we can talk about adaptability, where we can talk about how you deal with fear, where we can talk about how what preparation looks like, all of those things, those come up naturally. My daughter, who's a dancer, it's in that space that we can have those conversations of, hey, where does stress come up for you? Or with their friends or with as they're running for student council and putting themselves out there, any of those kinds of things. I think the more we dive into their world, we can help them to see and learn through their experience, and that becomes powerful.
And it's really teaching them. And I think anybody that's willing to listen is, we're talking about a lifestyle here,
Yeah.
not just like one little choice that maybe could make a ripple effect. We're talking about changing your lifestyle to really be intentional, to dive in and to do it day in and day out and have that grace with it. But teaching your kids at a young age, hey, this is the best way to live. This is how God wants us to live.
And
Push into
and
this.
I'm glad you said it that way right at the end. That's how God wants it. So for me, I think that what happens in this world often is we, as human beings, we define ourselves by what we do and therefore what we accomplish or don't accomplish. And what we've tried to do in our home is to build a foundation that first and foremost, your identity is as a child of God. That becomes the most important factor. So faith be becomes a huge piece of that, but also inherent values that come along with it. And then, yeah, we want to pursue all the good things and we want to use our talents for all of those good things. And we want to make an impact and serve other people and everything that we can. But it's easy to get lost in the minutia of that. And especially if there's nothing that's an anchor. For us, it's been faith. I think as a parent, I feel like it would be much harder to navigate that and feel like I was setting my kids up for success without it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things, and I've been talking about this a lot lately because God just keeps bringing it to mind for me, is I look at the story of Gideon in the book of Judges. And here, Gideon, God brought together 32,000 men to fight for their freedom because they had been held captive by the Midianites for 7 years. And so the process of God narrowing it down from 32,000 ended up getting down to 300. And he wanted the glory in it. God did. But at the beginning of the story, and I had never noticed this until just a few weeks ago when I was reading it, when the angel visited Gideon at the very beginning, he introduced himself and said, I'm here with the Lord. But the final part was, you are a mighty warrior.
Mm.
And he showed him his identity first and said, Gideon, this is who you are. And then later Gideon said, no, wait, I'm from the least of the weakest clan and the least of my family. But it started with God saying, no, you are a mighty warrior. Now let's get into the rest of it. And I think that's such a powerful thing when we go back to having to know, who are we? What's our identity and what's the foundation of that? And when we begin to understand, that is where we begin to experience the more powerful shift of our purpose, of high performance. That's the foundation. And that's what's changed my life too, in the most powerful way. Having that, I'm a child of God first,
I
mighty
love
warrior.
that. I love that insight around that story. What I was thinking about too, though, is if you're really serious about that as a parent, especially that's what we're talking about, is the level of dedication that it takes to that is the same. That means that for in our house that conversations about God are happening all the time, that prayer is happening every day, that scriptures are happening every day, like those kinds of things. And we're not perfect. Again, we're going back to consistency. When we miss a day, it's showing back up. It's okay. We did like tomorrow, let's make it better. But because of that, if that's important, I think that if you really just look at it, most people honestly show what they value based on where they spend their time and money. It's hard to argue that you have these other values that you're not investing in.
Yeah.
And that would be the litmus test in my mind is okay, where are you spending your time, money, energy, whether it's with your kids pertaining to their development or in your own development? Those things matter.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. I think, I don't know if it was Dave Ramsey that talks about, or who it said, show me your heart, just show me your checkbook. And
Yeah.
I think the same thing can go with our calendar. Show me
Yeah.
your calendar where you're putting your time and your energy. And the more I live a life of purpose, the more rewarding it gets too. And that's, I think that's something that's really powerful because we live in a day of instant gratification and going off of how we feel. And, oh, do I feel sometimes I don't feel like getting up early and reading the Bible, or I don't feel like doing different things, but my purpose is bigger. And I think it goes back to even what you're talking about of the five different things of being consistent, of adaptability, of movement or momentum, and the other ones. It's powerful when we begin to incorporate all those into our lives and we begin to say, I'm going to do this not because I feel like it or don't feel like it, but because it's something so much bigger. And truly, I think the same with me is I couldn't do it without the Lord as my focus. Like what a delight it is to have him the center. In when you look at the how your book that you're coming out with is science backed and or research backed and all that with science, do you see correlations of what God has designed?
100%. I don't think there's new ideas. If we're being real, like I've written 5 books. None of them are like earth-shattering new ideas. We all find our own way to present the information and package it and put it together. But yeah, I think the lesson you just shared from Gideon, right? To understand that it starts with identity, that's from thousands and thousands of years ago. I think all of those principles have been taught. And I think that often we don't give ourselves, we don't recognize the amount of learning and personal growth that takes place by trying to live a faith filled life too. What scriptures, what leaders, what Christ, what has taught us. I think we take that for granted a lot.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think it's powerful as we begin to help others recognize like how powerful it is to live with intention, to have him the center of it and how life changing it is. So,
Yeah.
Ty, as we wrap this up, what is one thing or a key thing that you've really lived by amongst the other things that we've been talking about in your life to really get to where you are at today? Because I'm sure that you've had hard days that you've wanted to give up and you've gone, why am I doing this? God, are you sure? Did I hear you right? And yet you've kept pushing through. What is some advice to give to the listeners?
Yeah, so I'll share something that I came up with a long time ago, and it's a concept I call the core four. That, but when I, where it came out of is studying Christ. And I believe that as human beings across the board, these four activities give us the biggest sense of purpose and fulfillment. And so, trying to find purpose and be in alignment with that, I would recommend that you spend time in these four activities. The four activities are number one, creating. I think we're creators. I think we are supposed to use our imagination, supposed to use our skills, supposed to build, create something. Like when I'm sitting here holding this book in my hands that I created this, it didn't exist before. This is like such a cool, satisfying, and like maybe that's you go build a structure in your backyard or you like creating something. I think we're supposed to create. Number two is connecting. I think that we're supposed to connect with each other, have deep, meaningful conversations. It's so easy to have just surface conversations. It's so easy to just send a text or whatever, and there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes just pick up the phone. Sometimes just try and really connect with people. Number three is contributing, like really serve people, get outside of yourself, add value to other people's lives, go serve in a soup kitchen, go do something that contributes. And number four is coaching. You may not view yourself as a coach, but I think a coach is somebody who imparts experience, shares their perspective, allows them to be in a place where you can add value to other people. And I share that because in this conversation around purpose, I started sharing that concept 10 plus years ago. But then several years ago, personally, I had some of the hardest times in my life. And it came really as a result of my wife having some real struggles with mental health. And obviously, that took a toll on her, but took a toll on me and our family and stuff too as we navigated that. And it was interesting for me at some point to have that recognition and say, I need to go back to the core four, right? Like, I need to personally create. Like I hadn't been creating, and I create a lot of content. That's what I do. And when you're in a state of just surviving, you're not thriving. And I need to get outside of myself. I need to go serve other people, and I need to connect because when life's not going great, you don't want to connect. You don't want to have real conversations because it's vulnerable. It's not, you don't want to show up that way. And so you isolate, right? And you also then feel like an imposter. I don't want to coach anybody. Like my life's a disaster right now. And so for me, those four activities helped me refine me and helped me through that process. And something that I come back to often. And as we're having this conversation about purpose, I think that's an easy way for people to go, okay, yeah, I need to find purpose and fulfillment through those four things.
Wow. I love that. I think that is such a powerful way to just wrap up this episode, because I think people are going to be challenged here. There's some stuff that's going to stick with them going, okay, I got to do some shifting, and it's worth it. It's worth the work. It's worth the shift, and to walk out the purpose that God has for us. Ty, thank you for being on here today. Thank
Yeah.
you just taking the time out of your day. Thank you for even just presenting at my convention with your sons. It was so inspiring. I know everybody was just so excited. I definitely want to make sure to include your links in the comment section when I get this posted. So send those my way, and anybody can reach out to you. And you said May 15th?
May 15th, yeah. We'll have some pre-orders coming up soon. So yeah, if you connect with me on social media or anything like that, it'll be coming out soon.
Okay, awesome. Let's wrap this up. With that being said, you guys, thank you for listening to this episode of The Purpose Effect. If today's episode spoke to you, here's what I ask you to do. Share it with a friend, subscribe. We're on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, all those major platforms. Help us spread the word of what a life looks like to live with purpose. Remember, you're called, you're capable, and you were created with intention. Now, go and live it.